So thank you, Jack, very much for your kind introduction, and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Solutions Beyond Water, Successfully Pipetting Problematic Liquids. I'm Rudolf Walczak, and together with my colleague Hanna E. Henke, we will guide you through the webinar. So what are our objectives for today's presentation? We want to provide you with an overview of the different liquid handling instruments that you can be using in your work and show you some of the advantages and disadvantages. We want to highlight challenges that you may be facing in your work when working with problem liquids. And of course, we also want to introduce the different liquid classes when it comes to problem liquids. And at the same time, present solutions and different options that you have for working with them and for handling them successfully. And you will see as we go through the webinar and discuss the different liquids, we will be highlighting the benefits for a specific kind of pipette/dispenser, namely the handheld dispensers. They have additional benefits which go beyond problem liquids, and we also briefly want to highlight those at the end as well. So let's start with the introduction to the different liquid handling instruments before going to the different liquid classes. So in life science, almost every kind of workflow or every kind of project involves working with liquids. This is no surprise, as most of the processes of life occur in an aqueous environment, and consequently cell biologists, biochemists, and molecular biologists all work with different kinds of liquids. And in this tag cloud you see some of the typical applications that you encounter in a life science lab, and we're quite sure that you will also be familiar with most of them, and you will also be doing some of these things in your own work. For each of these different applications, you work with different liquids, and of course they have different properties and consequently different requirements, both in terms of how you should optimally handle them and work with them, but also what would be the best instrument, the best pipette to actually work with them. And when we work with liquids or solutions, there are many things to consider. Usually we don't think too much about this in depth, but we want to create some awareness for some of the major points also for you. So the major aspects for choosing the right tools for working with liquids are, of course, what is the liquid, the kind of liquid that you work with. And another very important one is what's your sample throughput? How much pipetting do you do? How many samples do you have? And how complicated is the kind of work you actually do? Then, of course, there are many other considerations. We've just listed two. What is the volume range in which you work? And, of course, also from which source do you pipette, into what destination vessel do you pipette? And there are many more. And all these aspects being considered, of course, determine what is the best tool that you should be using in your work. So we want to shed some more light on the two major kinds of criteria. The first one being, what is the kind of liquid that you work with? And for this